Welcome back, everybody, coast to coast, This Week in America. Always great to have you with us on the program. Information on the show available at thisweekinamerica.us. Back with us on the program, one of our favorite, most popular guests, back to share his incredible journey through several lifetimes as far back as 1,000,000 years. His blunders, triumphs, and the many worlds and places where those amazing experiences took place. Born in 1957, Robert Maxxim experienced several sleep-time visits to other worlds as a child, witnessed countless alien craft. These experiences continue to date in both wake and sleep states. He studied concert piano at age 3, but changed his calling to science following the visionary experiences. The book is a culmination, the book being the Legacy series, a culmination of these experiences shared with the world for the first time. Robert spent 40 years studying science, religion, and the science of life, presented by Dr. Ernest Norman, validating sightings that started in 1962, expanded into visions in July of 1973, proceeded to confirm these experiences with other established sources, George Adamski brothers from other worlds that helped him instruct others over the years in person and mentally as well. The book is a series of culminations, as I mentioned, visionary confirmation efforts written in novel form, and he's with us to talk about the Legacy series. Robert Maxxim back on This Week in America. Robert, great to have you with us once again.
Oh, excited to be here. Thank you, Rick.
It is always fun, and you can go back to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and go to YouTube and iTunes and listen and watch the various programs. Robert's website is Argaetan, RGAETAN.com, and you can do the same there. A lot of great information there. You'll hear a lot during the course of the program. Validation, a lot of great pictures at the website. It's the Legacy series. And let's start right away. We have so many questions from listeners and viewers. One is talking about the Legacy series. It's a 5-part series. It's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, at Robert's website. Bill Sullivan is the main character in the Legacy series, and he has a habit of sitting against Maylen's door. And the question is asked, why is that? And we'll ask the man who can answer that question. Robert, why is that?
Well, Maylen is, of course, a Martian lady that he meets in the first episode. And he falls in love with her, and in touring with her throughout the world in their upcoming missions, he finds himself wanting to protect her. So to do so, he leans against the door at night and sleeps there. And of course, there is a reason why he's doing that. The way that the book is structured, it goes along as the experience is progressing. So much as anyone who's going to a certain event, they really don't have all the answers to what's going on in their lives until they have gone through the experience.
Right.
So the book is moving along in that sense. He's sleeping outside her door. But what it is everything that we do in life is a repeat of a past life. So surely if he was sleeping against her door in this one life, he had done it before. There were many habits that Bill Sullivan had. And again, they were all repeats of a past lifetime. We can't get away from that. And that is one of the primary points that the Legacy book series attempts to do, and to let the reader understand that anything that we like, dislike, do, think, are drawn to, or do out of habit is really because we have done it before. And in this case, sure enough, this habit did date back about 1,000,000 years. But of course, the book series, as you move along, you begin to see what these habits were.
You know, it's interesting, and I'll get back to the main character, Bill Sullivan, in a second. Another question, basically, the genesis of the character and what he had to overcome in the story. This repetition, do you find that in your life where you're doing something and it's not for the first time? You've actually done it before?
Oh, that's right, yes. In many ways, there are things that I do, normally most people do, and we think it's normal, but there comes a time where you stop and you say, why am I doing this? Why do I behave in this manner? Why do I speak this way? Why am I drawn to this thing? And that is the first clue that should tell the individual you are reliving. Something is coming back to you. There's an energy from another lifetime, another experience, and it's trying to play itself through your life right now. And it will repeat, and it will repeat, and it will repeat until you become aware of it. You cancel it out, you work it out, and then you can move on to conquer other habits, because that one will probably not be coming back.
Robert Maxxim, our guest on This Week in America. We're talking about the Legacy series. That's the 5-part series that Robert has witnessed. I mentioned in the beginning that you experienced sleep time visits at an early age, continuing to this date, visited with countless alien craft, and you talk about these visions. It's interesting as you're talking there. Do you have random dreams, or are most of the dreams you have taking you back to thousands of years ago?
It was not always very clear. I've had these visions for many years, and of course I did not understand them. But as I learned, became aware of what was going on, then yes, I realized, I have to pay some attention. Some dreams were so clear. I had language, I had names, I had dates, I had location, full living color, and when I wrote Legacy, all of those details went into that. The more I have become aware of how this works, the more these dreams and these visions take place. And I might have a vision, for example, just talking with you on this interview, I might get an inkling of something. It just flashes back. It talks to you. It tells you, you were this, you did this, you're saying this because of the situation. The past will speak to you, and it is very clear, but only if you train yourself to be objective with your thoughts.
Well, I was just going to ask you that, because we all have fleeting thoughts, and in most cases, we dismiss them. We don't. It's just like it's sort of a random thought. Mm-hmm. It's here, it's gone. I'm not paying much attention to it. So if we were more attuned, we might be able to really interpret what it is that we think it is a random thought. It may not necessarily be a random thought.
Rick, we spend our lives basically hiding this past, trying to entertain ourselves, put our thoughts away from what we really should be taking notice of. And that is what we train ourselves to be blind to that. Then constantly we're told you only live once. You have to make it in this life. You have to step over people and be famous. Well, of course, you start thinking that way, which is a norm. What's going to happen? You're going to be completely ignorant of these facts and these events that are just crying. They're begging for you to see them so that you can move on. This life, if we can call it a life, is just a stepping stone for us. It is a classroom, and we have made it a point to come here so that we can see this past, so we can learn to be truthful and honest, see it, cover it, move on. But with the way that we're taught and the fears that we have about not being someone perfect, well, guess what? We're covering it up constantly. We need to get out of the mold, Rick. We need to be more open-minded and objective, and look at every thought, look at every fear, because the fear, when fear arises, is basically our inability to deal with something. And what do? We cover it up. We don't want to be weak. We want to be strong. We want to not lose. We want to be upfront. So we're going to cover it. But that fear is telling us, but what you are afraid of or what you are unable to do, you should look more into that. There's something to that. Something happened in the past that now brings you to that. Case in point, and I'll be brief about it. I'll tell you what, I spent years trying to learn how to swim. Now, you would think someone born in Cuba doesn't swim. There's got to be something wrong with that.
Yeah, you think that would be natural, yes, because you're around the water there.
Oh, but I couldn't even walk into 3 feet of water. I just dreaded it. But it wasn't until I was about 22 years old that I finally saw why. And it was a drowning that happened in 1853 in the Atlantic Ocean. That is all annotated in the Legacy series. But yet again, here's a fear. And I was not objective. I did not ask myself, why are you afraid? And had I asked myself that question earlier, I would have figured it out. But it took me almost 18 years, first, to listen, and second, to really see why.
Interesting. Robert Maxxim is our guest on the program. That's Maxxim. We're talking about the Legacy series. Information available. The book's available at Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com. Robert's website is rgaetan, rgaetan.com. Another website where you'll find information is unariusunited.com. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and you can link on to both those. I want to talk about the visions because they are very clear, your interpretation of the visions. We got a graphic that we'll be talking about in a couple of seconds. Before that, back to follow up. This is part of the original question on Bill Sullivan. Who exactly is Bill Sullivan at the beginning of the story? What did he have to overcome? And I guess we've talked about this sort of before. Bill Sullivan and Robert Maxxim, pretty much the same person, right?
It is. And when I decided to publish Legacy, I made a promise to myself. And it was, I am going to be dead honest and very objective about who I am and who I have been and what I want to become. So Bill Sullivan is who I was before I had these visions. Bill Sullivan did not believe in God. Bill Sullivan was a scientist. He wanted to use science to basically conquer the universe. He was bound. His friends were the organizations of science. He played along with what the scientists believed because it gave him fame, it gave him a position. So did he believe in life on other worlds? No. So he was completely anti-alien, anti-higher science, anti-God, everything. So as the story is developing, guess what begins to happen? The first thing that Bill Sullivan has to do is, as I mentioned before, he had to be objective. He had all of these emotions that were bottling him up, a lot of stress in his life. And it was his inner self that was saying, Bill, look at yourself. Look at your thoughts. If you only listen to your thoughts, you would know why you feel this way. And he begins to realize, well, my dad was a preacher. I went against him. I live basically to please my scientific friends so that I can have a job. All this stuff that I believed in, now that I have discovered the structure in Mars, I realized that yes, there's life on other worlds. I was wrong. And his house of cards begins to smash because everything he believed in before is gone. And on top of that, he is beginning to see visions from the past. May Lin, before he meets her, May Lin is already working with him, prepping him for their meeting. And she is giving him visions of who he was in the past, what he was involved with. And yeah, I'm sorry. When I think of that past and some of the things that I was involved with, my throat just chokes up.
It has to be emotional.
Powerful.
Yes. As you do that, and this is all in the Legacy series, 5 books, and it's really well done. And you're talking about romance, space battles, intrigue, and it's all based with scientific, spiritual principles. That's what Robert does. It deals with science. Spent a lot of time trying to make sense of what it was with the visions at an early age. how they progressed, and put it all into perspective. The information's at his website, rgaetan, GAETAN.com, and UnariusUnited.com. All the background at our website, thisweekinamerica.us, by looking at the YouTube version of the program as well as iTunes. In talking about visions, and we've seen some pictures before. These are your interpretation of the visions that you had. You have one that's very powerful that we're going to show now on the video version. We'll describe it on radio, and you'll be fine with that. But if you look at YouTube, this is amazing. The clarity of this. This is what the Atlantean Power Tower. Explain this. How you got this vision and what exactly it is.
I had 2 or 3 visions of this tower, and it was important that I came to understand precisely how it worked before I realized my involvement with it. The power tower was a very simple design. Its function was basically to bring in energy and store it in the core or beneath the surface of the planet. It brought the energy from the Van Allen belts. And of course, the Van Allen belts are always soaked by solar radiation. So it brought that radiation down into the tower, through the tower. It processed the energy and then dumped it into the planet. The planet was like a huge battery. Now, the tower had various functions. Not only did it store the energy, it also refined the energy so that it would transmit it out in appliances, vehicles, aircraft could tap into that energy, and without having an inner engine, they could fly, they could run, free power, basically. The same thing that Nikola Tesla tried to do in the late 1800s, early 1900s, but the government shut him down. A combination of these towers could also work in tandem, because imagine the towers being spark plugs in an engine.
Okay.
One would spark on, the other one spark off, and that way they moved the crankshaft in the engine and turns the wheels. Well, these could turn on and off, or one would inject less power than the other to create this balance in stored energy inside of the planet. By doing that, it would create electric waves inside of the mantle, the spinning waves. And as those waves spun, it created a very strong magnetic field that would then rise to the surface. And if it spun in one direction, it would create a high pressure center in the atmosphere. If it spun in the other direction, then it created a low pressure system. And this is how they controlled weather. They could keep a stable temperature around the planet, or at least over Atlantis. It was very comfortable, 70, 75
Right.
degrees all the time, breezy. They could make it rain wherever they wanted to. But in the final days, this was used as a weapon to persecute, shall we say, the followers of the light. And as they ran, these towers were used to either create dry conditions or thunderstorms or hurricanes where they were. You could also cause lava plumes to rise from the core through the mantle and create a volcano where they were. And this was one of the things that actually destroyed Atlantis, because they ended up creating a plume of magma right underneath their own towers, and that just destroyed the whole island. So the process by which the energy was processed was actually beyond our science today.
Well, I was just going to say, with your science background, and you have a science background, you work in science, how impressive is the technology? I mean, when you have these visions and you're actually seeing this, I mean, I'm thinking, wow, this is like really incredible. I mean, with the science background, would you say the same thing?
Well, yes, and scientifically, this was presented to me scientifically, first in concept, and then the details begin to come in, like the size of the tower, the width, the different frequency modulations that were taking place within the tower for safe operation, the amount of voltage generated, the passiveness, the frequency of resonance being used, the carrier, the type of crystal alloys. There was a chamber on top of the tower beneath the reception crystal. That chamber pulls at about 375 gigahertz. And imagine this round chamber just lined with very, very thick titanium, aluminum dioxide, chromium alloy crystals. I mean, they're very difficult, if impossible, to manufacture with our technology. That those crystals allowed this energy to come in and begin to bounce around like a laser. More energy came in, more built, until that energy became interdimensional. When it became interdimensional, then whatever energy there was there like 10 TeVs or 20 TeVs. It just became 1,000 TeVs. It got multiplied, and then it funneled right through into the flute or the cone of the tower. And then it demodulated. It spun down in frequency. Then it went into an LC network, and that brought it down until it was 300 kilohertz. And then that was injectable into the surface of the planet, where it was stored.
It's an amazing, and time always goes by way too quickly here. Got a bunch of questions. We'll get to them next time. It's the Legacy series. Robert Maxxim, our guest. That's Maxxim. His website is rgaetan, GAETAN.com. Another website with great information, unariusunited.com. Go to our website, thisweekinamerica.us, and link on directly. Everything is so vivid as you're talking, as you're reading the book. Legacy is a very visual book to read. You can see these images as you're reading. Any possibility that this would be a movie series? I can see this just being an excellent series that would do very well.
Well, there are so many different chapters to my relivings in these books. I could crank out 100 movies.
Yes.
The stories on Atlantis themselves, the description of the buildings, the people, the culture, the stripes, the different ages of Atlantis, where it was, what it looked like. I mean, if you're talking about previous Atlantis movies or Lemuria or Mars movies, they will be dwarfed. It will be dwarfed by the amount of detail that is in these books.
Well, I can tell as you're explaining it there. I mean, you have all the dimensions down. You've got all of the technical information down. It would make a blockbuster movie. It is a blockbuster literary series. Mm-hmm. It's called Legacy. It's available all across the country. Information at the website rgaetan, GAETAN.com. I'm going to take a minute or so here before we have to leave on the program. I'm always impressed when we finish, as we're doing the program, and I'm thinking, every day has to be an experience for you. Do you learn something new about yourself every day?
Oh, I do. And the most important thing for me is to find out how to best live life. And life is, of course, a term that we add to our present experience, and we don't think about beyond. Actually, we think more about life than we do death sometimes. And we have to realize that death doesn't really exist. And if that doesn't exist, does life exist? Well, neither does. We are collective beings of intelligent expression, infinite intelligent expression. Evolution is what exists, and we're evolutionary beings. And as I go through what I call life in this very small instance of expression, I can't help but see that everything around me is part of this intelligent energy from, shall we say, God. Everything is part of God. I am part of God. You're part of God. Rocks, atoms, everything that makes up our thoughts, everything is that infinite intelligence. And just because it doesn't move doesn't mean that it's intelligent. Just because it's small like an atom doesn't mean that it is not intelligent. Energy, the energy itself that brought these things to being, is the intelligence. If that energy is alive. And because of that life, intelligent energy, so are we. And that is what I try to focus on every moment of my life.
So much more to talk about, and we will. Our guest on the program, Robert Maxxim, Maxxim. The book is The Legacy Series. The book's The Legacy Series, available all across the country, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and from the website Argaetan, Gaetan.com, UnariusUnited.com. Great information as well. And you can log on directly at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Robert, it is always a pleasure. Look forward to our next chat. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. Love the visual. I mean, that is just so well done. It explains graphically what we're talking about. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're listening to This Week in America. All the information on Robert, the Legacy Series, at our website, thisweekinamerica.us. Stay tuned. Back in just a minute.